And speaking of President Donald Trump, he says he's, quote, not joking about maybe seeking a third term for president. Trump told Meet the Press that, quote, a lot of people want me to do it. When asked about the possibility, as you know from hopefully your history books and certainly the Constitution, it is against the law now for a president to run for more than 2 terms. Trump says there are, quote, ways around constitutional term limits on the presidency. He was not clear exactly what he meant by that, but our Scripps News congressional correspondent Nate Reed joins us live from Capitol Hill. And Nate, where you are some of Donald Trump's biggest defenders and supporters, what are they saying about a potential Donald Trump third term?
Well, look, for starters, we still don't have a lot of clarity from President Donald Trump about what exactly he was referring to or what methods he would seek a third term by, because the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution is fairly clear with regard to serving only 2 terms. That is the maximum limit, and that has been affirmed time and time again when we ask Republicans up here in the past about that possibility of President Trump seeking a third term. It's something he's been bringing up even since before he took the oath of office for his second term this time around. He clarified those comments yesterday, but left a lot of ambiguity in a conversation with reporters on Air Force One, including our own Haley Bull. Take a listen.
I have had more people ask me to have a third term, which is in a way a 4th term, because the other election, the 2020 election, was totally rigged. So it's actually sort of a 4th term in a certain way. I just don't want the credit for the second, because Biden was so bad, he did such a bad job. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm popular, if you want another term.
The Constitution limits a president to 2 terms. Is it your understanding that they have to be?
I don't even want to talk about it. I'm just telling you, I have had more people say, please run again. I said, we have a long way to go before we even think about that. But I've had a lot of people.
And Andrew, to be clear, we haven't heard from any Republicans yet today. Lawmakers are still returning to Washington, flying back for this week of Congress. But we did hear earlier this morning on CNBC from Senator John Husted. He replaced J.D. Vance in the U.S. Senate. He wasn't willing to entertain the question of a third term and said that President Trump did not seem to be serious. Take a listen.
Senator, how do you feel about the president openly talking about a third term? In the context of either changing the Constitution itself or potentially in the context of putting forth a, I don't know if it would be a straw man, but, you know, putting forth a Vance to then give him the presidency later?
The president was responding to a question. He wasn't advocating for that. And we all know that you would have to change the Constitution, and that would be highly unlikely.
Safe to say that even President Trump's most vocal backers in Congress not really willing to engage with that question of whether he could seek a third term or legally do so. Senator Chuck Grassley, third in line to the presidency, the Senate President pro tempore, longest-serving Senate Republican, was just asked by other reporters about whether he heard those remarks from President Trump. His response to those reporters: read the Constitution. So clearly Republicans not really engaging with this or backing up President Donald Trump when he makes these comments about serving a third term. Obviously, we'll continue to try and get reaction as we can as lawmakers arrive back on Capitol Hill for another week of session.
Yeah, and Nate, there was a member of the House of Representatives, Andy Ogles, who did introduce a bill some point earlier this year that essentially would have paved some mechanism for Donald Trump to run for another term. I assume
Andrew,
that has not really gone anywhere.
Yeah. Exactly, Andrew. I'm glad that you brought that up. So that bill that would allow for President Trump to have a third term would need a lot of steps to get past the finish line. For one, it would have to pass in the House of Representatives. That would be fairly easy, given that Republicans have a majority there. A lot of Republicans like President Trump, though still a lot of questions whether some would support that effort for him to seek a third term. Need to pass in the Senate, though, with a 2/3 margin, so 67 votes in favor. Remember, Republicans just control 53, so very difficult for Republicans to hit that threshold over here on the Senate side of the Capitol. It would then need to be ratified by 3/4 of all states. That appears to be the least likely option, including the hurdles that they would face over here in the U.S. Senate. So it's all but impossible for President Trump to seek that third term or even pass the constitutional amendment in time for his for the 2028 election for him to do so. So, yeah, still a lot of questions about whether that would even be feasible or if that was something that he was actually looking to do. Again, a lot of Republicans throwing cold water on that possibility, saying that the president isn't being serious or saying that he's just kind of speaking with bluster. That's something we just heard another reporter get an answer from the House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. So again, a lot of questions about the feasibility of that. At the same time, it seems like those efforts very unlikely to succeed, Andrew.
Yeah, all right. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nate. Nate, I know you'll be tracking it as members continue to filter into D.C. tonight and into tomorrow morning. Thank you from Capitol Hill.